Hello, this is a how to play video for Round 10 Boxing by Crazy Joe's Games. There's Crazy Joe making an appearance, and he's going to be helping us learn how to play the game. This game's gone through a few changes, and once again, this is another change, and most of these changes have been inspired by the people who have tried the print and play version and sent in suggestions for a way to make the game better, more fun, more enjoyable. So these are the components. The game will come with two boxers, one from the blue corner, one from the red corner, a deck of 10 Ring Girl cards. Now these card girl illustrations haven't been fully completed yet. All of them will be unique and they will have a number from 1 through 10. So you'll set up this deck from 1 through 10. You're going to play through 10 rounds and your objective is to win the most rounds. You also have, each player has a deck of punching cards. Each deck's going to have set number. Both decks have the same amount of jabs, hooks, uppercuts, and each deck has 2 knockdown cards. So you'd begin the game by shuffling up your deck and decide who's going to play first. So on your turn, each round, both players will draw 2 cards from the top of their deck. Now these cards are basically their hand of hidden punching cards, so you don't show them to your opponent, but you know what they are, you can see them, and you can't look at the cards that are in your deck after you shuffled it. Each round or each turn, you have the option to throw a punch at your opponent from the top of your deck by flipping it and placing it on your opponent's boxer. This punch was landed on their boxer. Each punch has a hit point located in the top right hand corner of the card. A jab's worth 1 point, a hook's worth 2 points, and an uppercut is worth 3 points. So, your other option on your turn is to throw a punch from your hand. If you do, it's the same thing. You throw it on your opponent, then you draw a new card. You'll always have 2 hidden punching cards in your hand. It'd be your opponent's turn. On their turn, they have that same option to throw a card from their hand or the top of their deck. If they throw a punch from the top of their deck and it's a knockdown card, they would automatically win the round. When you win a round, you gain that Ring Girl card. So if this was round 1 and this player landed the knockdown, they would win that round, and you'd place that card aside. At the end of the round, you take all the cards that were thrown and reshuffle your punching deck and begin a new round. If you have a knockdown card in your hand, you cannot throw it on your opponent. You cannot choose to throw it from your hand. The way you would be able to land that knockdown from your hand is if you have taken less punches than your opponent. So if this is the beginning of a round, no player has taken more punches than their opponent, the player who won the previous round would play first. So let's say, for example, this blue player would play first. He has the option to not throw a punch, but decide to stand with the cards that he has in his hand. If his opponent also decides to stand, they would both land those punches on their opponent's boxer for the final punches thrown in the round. And then the player with the greater hit points landed on their opponent would win the round, with the exception if a player had that knockdown card in their hand. And then they would win that round. If both players had a knockdown, in the scenario where both players decided to stand, if both players had a knockdown as their final punch is thrown in the scenario where they both decided to stand with the cards they had in their hand, the round would be a draw, and the Ring Girl card for that round would be discarded from the game. So what happens now is that if both players, at the end of 10 rounds, if both players, let's say, had the same amount of Ring Girl cards by winning those rounds, they would continue to play a new round until one player won a round, and then they would win that game. think I covered everything here in the rules, and hopefully you check out the Kickstarter project and read a little bit more about the game, and you can download the rules at crazyjoesgames.com. Thank you so much for watching this video. Hello, this is more of the how to play video for round 10 boxing, and I want to talk about a few strategies in the game. So I set up a scenario where the red player has thrown 2 jabs at his opponent. The blue player has thrown a jab and an uppercut. Once again, on your turn, you have the choice to throw a punch from your hand, or you can throw a punch from the top of your deck. So in this case, let's say it was the red player's turn. They would have to throw a punch at their opponent. They could not choose to stand because they have taken more hit points than their opponent. Now, this is a bluffing scenario where you are trying to force your opponent, in this case the blue player, may have chosen to throw the uppercut, or he may have thrown it from the top of his deck and gotten lucky and landed 3 hit points on his opponent. It's forcing the red player to throw a punch to try to see whether or not they have something in their hand that is a high hit point value, or they may choose to throw the punch from the top of their deck and bluff the blue player into thinking that they don't have a good hand, or they might have a good hand, they're just trying to be strategic. So this player can't throw the knockdown because it's in his hand. He still has one in the deck, but the deck contains 20 cards. The odds that he would land one, he'd be taking a chance. He may choose to throw a hook, and he'd equal the same amount of hit points that he's landed on his opponent. He'd draw a new card and possibly get a better card in his hand, in which he did, which is an uppercut that's worth 3 points. So go back to the blue player. Now both players have taken equal hit points, so this player can choose to stand with the cards in his hand, or he can choose to continue to throw punches on his opponent. Now if both players continue to exchange punches, if one player at one point exceeds 9 hit points, they lose the round and their opponent wins the round and gains one of the ring girl cards for that round. So that's some of the strategy involved in the game as far as whether or not you want to exchange punches or decide to stand with the cards in your hand and see how it plays out. And if that was the case in this situation, this would actually be a draw because both players landed a knockdown. If the knockdowns weren't involved in a round and both players decided to stand, the player who landed the greater amount of hit points on their opponent would win the round. In this case, it would be this player right here who has landed a greater amount of hit points. The red player would win the ring girl card for that round. So that's some of the strategy in the game, and thank you for taking the time to listen and watch this video.